Coming up on Theater Talk.
There's a musical about Carole King's
called
life
Beautiful, the musical.
What do we know about it? What are we hearing?
I hope it's not as much of a whitewash as the Janis Joplin show, which made you think that Janis just had an occasional cocktail. You know, was a really nice gal who always showed up on time and occasionally was a little depressed.
Yeah. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation. From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post, and we're already laughing because we have a very, very funny panel that we put together today.
And we're back for a very, very funny season on Broadway.
Exactly. We're going to take a look ahead at what is coming at us on Broadway and off-Broadway this fall season with a panel of distinguished experts in the field of theater journalism. We begin with Jesse Green, who...
Where are they?
Who has been promoted now. You are now, if I'm not mistaken, the chief drama critic for New York Magazine.
Well, there's only one, so saying chief isn't really very significant.
I have to ask you, Jesse, though, I mean, you're known to be very, very friendly with a lot of people in the theater world. How are you going to be able to put the knife into productions of friends of yours now?
Have you read the piece I did on Arthur Lawrence? You've only talked about it every time I've been here for the last 6 years.
Yes, you killed poor
Yes, and he's dead now, so I think that answers the question.
But for example, I know you're working on a book with Mary Rogers. Will you be able to review anything by Richard Rogers?
Because those guys are trying to make it.
She hates her father. So it's fine.
Okay. She'll encourage you in any attack on the Sound of Music. All right, well, congratulations on the new gig, Jesse Green. Our old friend Michael Musto, who used to be at the Village Voice. Are we allowed to even mention that?
It's a pretty well-known fact. Yeah.
That's despicable.
But no, you're on something else now. I got to get my notes here.
Michael.
Could you be any more patronizing, you toad? My new column is Musto, the musical, on out.com. I cover theater. I cover all forms of entertainment, just like the old column, but even better.
Oh, and
I'm like Sutton Foster. You just can't stop me. I just keep singing, dancing, and writing.
Plus, you are a brand, and you are in many other publications, including the New York Times. Speaking of which...
Good segue.
The queen of the segues.
Good segue. Whoa, subtle.
Thanks, you
Speaking of which, our old friend Patrick Healy, excellent theater reporter for the New York Times, who hasn't been around Theater Talk for a while.
Yeah,
so
it's great to be back. Thanks for calling me up.
Patrick, I want to get a sense. You've been covering Broadway now for, God, like 5 or 6 years, or even longer now. Give me, if you, sort of an overall take on what is happening on Broadway right now this season. I mean, what are the themes, the trends? What do you see shaping up?
The hot shows are still from last season.
Yeah.
You know, they've figured out a way with, you know, the premium price ticketing to be making a lot of money at a show like Kinky Boots and Motown. That's what's getting the people in. This fall doesn't look as bad as last fall when we had, you know, Scandalous and Chaplin and things that were just petering out. But you've got, it seems like a lot of talent coming in attached to projects that, you know, people are still investing, still putting money in, but it still seems like a lot of the excitement is from last season. Not a lot of shows, musicals that are generating a lot of energy. Plays somewhat more.
There's 12 plays, and there's only 6 musicals. So each play costs less to put on than any musical. So the investments are waiting for the spring, partly because they need the big houses, which are not free.
Right. Well, the play that everyone is talking about, and that Scott Rudin, the producer, seems, Michael, to have made totally critic-proof, is Betrayal with Daniel Craig and Rachel Weisz and a third person that no one's ever heard of before. I think the advances are going to hit like $14 million before it opens. Doesn't matter even if it's good or bad?
It's critic-proof, and the premium tickets are $423. You have to mortgage your house to get a good seat. And the thing is, no one's talking about Rachel Weisz. She happens to be an Oscar winner. You know, she has a pretty good career going on. Yeah. But it's all about Daniel Craig, and it's actually very brave of him to play a part where she's cheating with the other guy we don't know the name of. It's also brave of all 3 of them.
They're married, right?
Right.
Yes, they are married. Yeah. And it's also brave of all 3 of them to do a play that goes backwards in time, because we remember Merrily We Roll.
Well, oh, come on.
It's just too much work for the audience, paying that much money to have to then figure out,
oh, it's going back.
Wait, this happened already.
But Betrayal has been successful previously, so.
Right, but what about this thing that Rudin has really pioneered, which is stars for limited runs, selling tickets at the absolutely most expensive price you can put it at, and it seems to work.
He's a brilliant marketer. I mean, he's a great producer, but a brilliant marketer in terms of creating an event theater moment. So he's taken, in a way, sort of like so much oxygen, from the system by creating so much attention on Betrayal and sort of the ticket sales. That said, I'm not sure if there are people who are spending $423 on Betrayal who would necessarily be going to Richard III or No Man's Land. I mean, this takes it to a different kind of an event than just, oh, let's go see a Broadway play.
In your critic's hat there, Jesse, are you sort of going in prepared to kill, even though you know that it's critic-proof? Does that sort of get your dander up a little bit, that Scott has done an end run around you guys?
No, I kind of feel free to say.
And you're very close to Scott, too, right?
He's right here, as you can see. Not especially.
I think, darling, we'll not talk about who's close to Scott now.
No, it doesn't have that effect on me because, in a way, I feel freed up to write whatever I want. It's not going to matter. I'm not going to hurt anybody, certainly. And also, as it happens, I think Betrayal is a great play and directed by Mike Nichols. I mean, it's not exactly likely to be terrible.
Right, right.
I just don't get how brilliant this is to get, we'll get a big movie star and his famous movie star wife and put them in a kind of 3-character play. I don't see the genius.
But I think
it's something people have always done. You get movie stars and you charge a lot of money.
But not with that kind of advertising budget on a play. Scott Rudin's been spending a lot of money in the New York Times and New York Magazine and the New Yorker. I mean, creating like such a sort of like rush of attention that usually shows, and especially plays, depend on the critics to bring them attention. Here, it's just I don't know. I feel like it's sort
But
of
it's like an
dominating.
anomaly. I mean, to me, it's they're going to bring that in. They're going to make a lot of money. They're going to have Daniel Craig, and then it's over. And now, what are we really doing on Broadway? And what's really going to
First date.
Well, look,
nurture
new plays. It's not been good for new plays, right? I mean, the list that you were reading from, it's a lot of revivals.
Snow Geese. I rest my case.
Well, since you bring it up, what the hell is Snow Geese?
It must be like for the Duck Dynasty crowd. No. It's a Chekhovian original play. We welcome any original play. It's about a family in World War I. Mary Louise Parker plays a woman who's widowed, and it's about
and
how the
she's a
family
big star,
survives.
so that's
and I haven't seen it, but I'm looking forward to anything new.
Yeah. Do you know anything about Snow Geese?
Exactly what he said. I'm not sure that these event plays that we've been talking about, these tempo plays, are so damaging to the rest of the territory. It could be argued, and I don't have, statistics for this, that it creates an excitement about going to the theater that may carry over to some of the other shows, possibly not to Soul Doctor.
No, that's just true. Pat,
Well, should we explain to our vast audience out there in America that Soul Doctor
Shlomo the rabbi,
was a
singing rabbi.
musical about Rabbi Shlomo
Who you've
Carlebach.
never heard of, but turns out to have been a huge pop star who was friends with
now-
Nina Simone.
And they just
Big flop of the season.
and they just announced
Suddenly, Nina Simone is in 18 musicals this year.
Speaking
But
of
also, you know what, Michael, let me just say,
sure.
the teeth in Soul Doctor are amazing, and I was wondering, why is that? It's produced by a dentist from Florida
That is true.
with no taste.
Is that true?
Are the teeth good?
I didn't know.
Amazing pearly whites on Nina Simone sparkled.
Also, the best
She
Hollis
didn't
is
look
on
as good on
Broadway.
the Janis Joplin show.
That's right. Speaking of flops, I want to talk about something that I think is going to die, and maybe the big loser of the fall season is Big Fish,
I've never been a man who lived an office life.
which is the new musical starring Norbert Leo Butz that just opened to very tepid reviews. There really is no middle ground anymore, is there? I mean, you can't just be B. You've got to be A+, or you might as well just pack it up.
Right. I mean, musical theater producers looked at, the big hits like Wicked and Lion King and Book of Mormon and figured out the way we're going to recoup that $13 million is, is premium price tickets, is getting people to pay even a little more. They're not going to pay a little more for Big Fish. Big Fish's reviews were very mixed, and other than I think the crowd of Norbert Leo Butz, deep admirers who are going to come. No, I think they'll come. That'll be for a few months. I think we'll get at least through Christmas time.
Not if he's not
But
in
in terms
it.
of the well,
He's been
in
missing
terms of the
performances.
tourist audience, it's hard to imagine that show.
Now, I have not seen Big Fish yet because Norbert Leo Butz was sick the night I was scheduled to go, and so I have been rescheduled. But I want to hastily say I've talked to people who like it, and then I look at a show like Memphis, which won the Tony Award, what was it, 2 years ago, where that was a show we went in, this critic said, nah, and everybody thought, that's going to run a month. It ran all the way through the
Memphis
season.
had a great group
And won the
sales
Tony.
strategy.
Yeah.
It had
Why
it brought
couldn't Big
in
Fish get one?
Who's the target audience? I mean, other than Norbert Leo Butz lovers, and
Yeah.
we saw what happened with Catch Me
It
If
has
You
to do with
Can,
what it's
you know.
about.
Exactly. Memphis conveys this kind of music that lots and lots of people like.
Religion, African American. I mean, that was Memphis.
But we're confusing quality of material with potential sales. I'm not saying that they don't sometimes align. This may be a case where they don't. the story is, in effect, a story about how you die. Well, try selling that to group sales. So maybe that's the problem.
Could well be. Michael, what do you think of Ben Brantley in Pat's paper, over the moon for Cherry Jones in Glass Menagerie, this revival? Do you agree with the praise that's been heaped on this show?
I did like it a lot, and I think she gives a really bold performance. Some people, it's a mixed bag. When he hyped something like Matilda to that level, I think that hurt the show, because people were put off by Matilda.
You admired this production.
I did. I mean, I wasn't, having a baby over it like Ben was.
I thought the risk for it was the movement. It's such a. I think it's a beautifully written play, and John Tiffany, the director, who did once, came in and was doing some. I thought more on the experimental side with the movement. Cherry Jones really worked for me, though. I mean, I felt like she was this mother who had such sort of like controlling but loving sort of impulses.
What was very interesting about those stylized movements that you're describing is many of those are in the stage directions. Tennessee Williams had asked for, like, for instance, miming dinner with big gestures and stuff. That's in the script.
Well, what I thought interesting that you just touched on was, you're right, in this performance of Cherry Jones as Amanda Wingfield, you get the sense that she really does love the kids. She's not as grotesque as I've seen her portrayed before, but there's a part of her mind that just goes a little too far, and that's when she becomes smothering of these children that she really does love.
I thought it was an eye-opening production and performance. I don't think it was very experimental, actually. I think, as Susan was saying, it actually was, its raison d'etre and what it achieved was to go back to the text, find the poetic drama that Tennessee Williams wanted to write, and bring it to our time in a production. This has to happen every couple decades with all the classics, and I'm glad to have had the opportunity to see it done to this show.
Right. Now, Michael, what do you make of the all-male version of Twelfth Night, starring Mark Rylance, a fine actor, and Stephen Fry, who I had the great pleasure of having dinner with earlier this week, who's a total delight and very charming, and I don't think he's ever been on Broadway before.
I love Stephen Fry and Mark Rylance. He's the male Cherry Jones in a way. He's somebody who really gives bold performances. He gives 1,000%. I think it solves a Tony quandary of he's in 2 plays. How are they going to nominate him twice? He could be Best Actress for Twelfth Night.
That's right. He's playing what's her name?
Olivia.
Olivia in Twelfth Night, and he's in Richard II too in Repertory.
And this is a trend this year because Patrick Stewart and Sir Ian McKellen, who some people might know from, Star Trek and Lord of the Rings. No, they're real actors. Yeah. Okay, what I mean? They're going in repertory with No Man's Land and Waiting for Godot.
Right.
So we have a lot of people with British accents this year doing very, Tony type work.
How are these shows selling, Patrick? Are they, no one's close to Betrayal,
right? No one's near Betrayal. I mean, the one that's selling somewhat, I think, is the Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, but not a lot,
Yeah.
Still the X-Men fans, but the Mark Rylance, I haven't heard that the box office is good.
Question though, do you really think though there's this crossover that if people are X-Men fans, they're going to go see a Harold Pinter play? Is that crossover there, or are you basically selling a Harold Pinter play to fairly sophisticated New York theater goers who want to see Harold Pinter?
Right. I think there's some affection and association that people develop, rapport with the actors. So there may be curiosity. I don't know if they're going to hear those titles, how much they'll think about, well, how will I feel about going to see Waiting for Godot? They want to. That's still the excitement of live performance. You get to be in a room, with the actor who.
Because I find that question more with Daniel Craig. Are they going to buy this because of Daniel Craig?
I think we've seen that they do.
Yeah.
I went to see Sting did a concert series at the Public in anticipation of his show that's coming after The Last Ship. He did 10 concerts to raise money for the public, and high rollers were invited to come, but there were a bunch of people there who were clearly not exactly part of the normal theater-going crowd, shall we say. They seemed to be more like permanent Sting fans. They paid the $2,000 or whatever it was to get there and started inappropriately catcalling.
Isn't that why you get a star?
How is Orlando Bloom selling in Romeo and Juliet?
Terribly. It's a big dud.
Let's ask our sales consultant.
Right, thanks. Great. Patrick. I'm like Phil Smith back in the day with my box office receipts.
So that big
not well. But I mean, that's a tough, it's a tough draw. There's a lot of Shakespeare going on. I mean, I'm personally really looking forward to seeing what Julie Taymor does with Midsummer Night's Dream out in Brooklyn, in October and this month. But no, Orlando Bloom, they're pulling in like okay money, but not good enough.
I'm looking forward to seeing A Time to Kill.
No, you're not.
Are you?
Yes, I am.
Why?
Because I love courtroom dramas. No one has a comment on
get
that?
it.
Wow, that was the longest silence we've had on this show ever.
You can see how enthusiastic we are about A Time to Kill.
And
Okay.
I too am interested in A Gentleman's Guide to Love and
Yes,
Murder.
well, that's, now what do we know about
is.
that?
Oh, it's a new musical that's based on the same material as the wonderful film Kind Hearts and Cornets. Anyone? Sir Alec Guinness?
With Alec
Oh, I love
Guinness
that.
as
And
8 different
it's got
characters.
Jefferson Mays.
Right, they couldn't get the rights to the film, so they went back to the original novel that the film had been based on, and it stars Jefferson Mays as 8 of the heirs to a fortune,
Who are bumped
each of whom
off.
have to be bumped off in
By
order.
the ninth guy who's played by the villain from Ghost the Musical. I know this stuff.
There you go.
Okay.
What's his name?
Bryce Pincus.
You got it. No, Pinkness.
Pinkham. Pinkham.
Pinkham.
That could be one of the sleepers, The Gentleman's Guide to
Well,
It's not just a
Turks
sleeper. It
liked
got
it
raised
out of
out of
town.
town.
Yeah.
And Jefferson
Yeah.
Mays is the front runner to win the Tony.
Already?
Or 8 Tonys.
Really?
Really?
Wow.
Well, the Spring is pretty heavy and gigantic musical, so it's a little early for that.
What do we hear now? You went up to Boston to see All the Way, which you and I both like. You being an old political reporter, you and I both like political dramas. This is about LBJ and starring Bryan Cranston. What did you make of it? I know your critic Charles Isherwood was a little cool.
They couldn't get Holland Taylor.
Reverse drag. Bryan Cranston is fantastic as LBJ. It's a 3-hour play. Fortunately, Bryan Cranston's on stage for about 2 hours and 50 minutes of it. It's an incredible sort of physical and emotional performance.
And it's about LBJ's first.
It's about the first year of LBJ's presidency. It starts with on the plane back from Dallas. JFK has just been shot. It ends with his election the following November as president. And, you know, it has a great dramatic arc through the passage of the Civil Rights Act. And it really builds to that very nicely. And it hits that at about 2 hours and 30 minutes. And then it needs to cover from the summer through re-election. And it feels like it sort of starts going a slightly different direction. I talked to the playwright,
Robert Schenken.
Robert Schenken, and he said that most of his work in terms of rewrites is going to be in that sort of last
they're
part
working
of the
on
second
it.
act.
How close does it track Robert Caro's great biography of LBJ?
Pretty closely. You know what it reminded me of was Tony Kushner's screenplay for Lincoln. It tries to take this man and this presidency and tell it through his legislative maneuvering on the Civil Rights Act. I mean, that's sort of the LBJ from Caro of the arm twisting, the charm, you know,
Yeah, he could get right in
working
your
his
face
magic.
and bully you, but
Yeah.
then
And you see
seduce
how
you.
a bully can be incredibly effective and
Yes.
endearing. Like you can see what the upside to that approach
Huh, I've
is.
So
never,
it's
I've
not
never
all-
noticed that. Did they get rid of the other LBJ show?
I think that's dead.
What's the other LBJ show?
There was this little LBJ show that ran off Broadway this summer that the producer said was the accurate LBJ show as opposed to this one. But this one has Jeffrey Richards as a producer. He's producing, as usual, half the shows.
And Bryan Cranston.
Yeah.
And Bryan Cranston.
But I mean, your advice to them if they're watching is trim it.
It's tough, Michael. I mean, they have this conceit, which is get through the entire first year. If they ended it just with the Civil Rights Act, it would be very emotionally satisfying. But they seem
Maybe
to
they
wanna
could hand out a
tell
bill at the
story.
end of the show just saying what happened in the next few minutes.
Maybe they can hand out Robert Caro's the 4th volume of this.
It sounds like what they're going to do, which is smart, is they're going to cut some scenes, some whole scenes, and some moments that kind of have nothing to do with LBJ, sort of the scenes with George Wallace and his machinations. The downside with that for Bryan Cranston is it's an incredibly exhausting performance, and I don't know him well as an actor on stage, but he's working it for 3 hours.
Well, good.
Yeah, I got to say though, your description of it may be too long, and I hope they tighten it up. But it sounds more interesting than most of the stuff that is coming our way. But I like political plays.
Well, that wouldn't come in until the spring anyway,
Spring.
right?
Michael, you seem skeptical.
I hope they have guest stars like After Midnight, a show we haven't mentioned yet,
Yes.
which is a Duke Ellington pastiche with Wynton Marsalis having handpicked 17 jazz musicians. I read the press release. And they're having guest stars like Fantasia and K.D. Lang. And I really think
Shlomo
the
Carlebach will
LBJ
be
show could
appearing.
use... and Shlomo.
Oh, and Janis Joplin soon enough, I think.
Jason Carol King.
That's right.
Oh, speaking of Carole King, there's a musical about Carole King's
Called
life
Beautiful, the musical, with
coming in
Jesse Mueller, who's very talented.
Yeah. What do we know about it? What are we
I
hearing?
hope it's not as much of a whitewash as the Janis Joplin show, which made you think that Janis just had an occasional cocktail. You know, was a really nice gal who always showed up on time and occasionally was a little depressed. Her biggest depression and biggest addiction actually was to performing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's interesting though, because I've heard the scuttlebutt behind the scenes is that Janis Joplin's sister is in control of the whole Janis Joplin image, and she polices it, and she doesn't like anything that casts Janis in a negative light, and she's the driving force behind this basically whitewash job of Janis Joplin on Broadway.
Well, that's what they did with the Soul Doctor with Shlomo Carter.
Yes, well,
Whitewash.
they somehow eliminated the accusations of feeling up all those nice little Jewish girls that followed him all around the country.
There's a musical coming of Little Miss Sunshine.
Off-Broadway.
Yeah, Broadway.
There's a lot off-Broadway.
a lot off Broadway.
Yeah, but I got to say, the Little Miss Sunshine, and you can speak to this, Patrick, because this is, you covered some of this stuff. I feel Little Miss Sunshine comes in as kind of diminished goods because it had David Stone, powerhouse Broadway producer, behind it for a while, and he stepped away. And the perception is when someone as influential as David Stone steps away from it, that there's something not quite right with this show.
Do we know why he stepped away?
Why did he step away?
That's the perception. He was interested in it, and then he moved on to If Then, which is the Idina Menzel musical that's coming in. No, I think that perception's real. I think that's why it didn't go to Broadway. It went second stage. Was happy to do another James Lapine,
Bill Finn
show.
musical,
yeah. And hopefully it'll have a home there, and I'll be able to see, how good it is. I think that the challenge it sounded like with that show, if you remember from the movie, so much of the great sort of humor and moments happen in this van as they're driving across country. It sounds like when they did it out of town, a lot of that action was still taking place in this sort of physical van, which...
It's like driving Miss Daisy the musical. There's also the inherent problem of adapting these quirky films that we loved because they had their wry humor on screen. And in the old days, it was like Smile and Big, and they become flattened out, Big Fish in a way, which I did not dislike. I thought it had a lot of professionalism. But it's taking a quirky film and Broadwayizing it. Which,
And it
when people
seldom
start
works.
singing and dancing their feelings, it takes the quirk away.
Funny though, I mean, it worked for me. It worked with Once and with Kinky Boots.
Indeed.
I mean, they aren't quite that quirk, but they're those small movies that weren't quite sort of perfect that they found another way in with.
If people knew which ones would work and which ones wouldn't,
We'd all be David
we'd
Stone.
only get the ones that work. Can't tell until it's on the stage.
Right. All right, we got to wrap it up, Susan?
I'm awfully glad that
All right.
Terrence Rattigan's The Winslow Boy is coming.
You said cash. Why did you say cash if you meant get?
I don't know.
I suggest cash was the truth.
Well,
The
Rattigan,
production is very good.
Oh, you've seen it. It
Yes,
is
I have.
with Roger Reese and...
Roger Reese and
some fabulous-
Alessandra Nivola
Yes.
Who I hear is
as the
terrific.
lawyer. He's great.
Right. All right, just before we go, can you give us something a little bit sort of off the beaten path that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, this is odd for me. I don't like songwriter review type material, but Second Stage has a Burt Bacharach show coming in December called What's It All About? Completely rethought. You may remember there was a miserable one.
The Look of Love.
The
There have been
Look of
several
Love a few
lousy
years-
Burt Bacharach reviews over the years.
Yes, this one I saw it as a work in progress is pretty terrific looking.
Oh, good. All right, Michael, anything that you can draw our attention to?
Further down the season, I'm looking forward to Bullets Over Broadway, based on the Woody movie, and he's supervising picking old trunk songs out to create this jukeboxy score. And now he's not busy being the father of the kid who turns out to be Frank Sinatra's son or something. I don't know. I don't read gossip. So he has a lot of
You
time.
just write it.
I just write it.
That's right. And Patrick, anything you want to call our attention
Michael, I
to?
know how much you love 9-hour plays. I'm really looking forward to the Apple Family plays at the Public Theater. It's Richard Nelson's plays that he's done each fall at the Public that are around sort of it's about a family up in Rhinebeck, New York, around kind of a political event. This last one is about tied to the 50th anniversary of JFK's assassination. I've read it. It's a really lovely play. They're small, they're quiet, but
But they're 9 hours?
well, they're going to do a marathon weekend of all 4 plays,
great.
and I'm going
be
in early
there.
December. I challenge
I'll
you.
go with you. I'll be your date. And Susan, anything you'd like to call our attention to?
Well, I already said The Winslow Boy.
Did you steal this postal order?
Give me a moment.
Anything else?
Hold on. Thank you, darling.
I'm very much looking forward also, by the way, to Fun Home at the Public Theater, speaking of off-Broadway musicals based on the Alison Bechdel graphic novel. Anybody?
Janine Tesori's music
Janine
is supposed to be
Tesori,
beautiful.
and a book by Lisa Crone.
Hello, Susan.
Nope.
I come up with another one. And I'm also looking forward to Domesticated, the latest provocation from
I
Bruce
can't
Norris.
believe we didn't talk about Domesticated.
At Lincoln Center.
What is that?
Lincoln Center Theater. Well, Bruce Norris of
did
Clybourne
Clybourne
Park
Park,
has a new play just designed to, this should be right up your alley, to needle the liberal sensibilities. It's
good.
starring Laurie Metcalf and
Jeff Goldblum.
Have you
Is
read
it
it? Do you know anything about it? Is it good? It's good.
Very.
What's it? It's called Disturbances?
Domesticated.
It is now.
It's about political. It's sexual politics.
And it's
a
18
knockdown
hours long.
drag.
It's in Brooklyn.
No, it's at Lincoln Center and it's a normal length.
All right, guys, thanks a lot for your insights and advice for things to see this fall in New York City, should you be coming to town. Patrick Healy from the New York Times, Michael Musto from, what's it called? Musto the...
I hate you. I hope you die.
Musto the musical out.com.
And Jesse?
And Jesse Green from a proper publication, New York Magazine.
Well, thank you for that at least.
Thank you for being our guest
.net.
tonight on Theater Talk. You can sign up for viewer updates at theatertalk.org.
Or you can follow us on Twitter. Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, the Noel Coward Foundation, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.